Yeah. This is the Legacy League. Tell me what will your legacy be? Yeah.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Very exciting week 4 in the Massachusetts 2026 Winter League. A lot of exciting games. We had the 2 undefeated teams match up against each other. One of those teams still undefeated. Yeah, a lot to talk about. I think this was probably our best week yet, and hopefully it keeps getting better. I'm joined by my boy Steven today. Just me and him running the show today, so it's going to hear a lot from us. Yeah, let's get right into our first game. That's going to be We Got Us versus Top Dogs. We Got Us took this one 95 to 86. I mean, 86 has got to be the most points scored from a losing team so far. Just a offensive show from each side. We Got Us, I was hyping up their defense last week, but it kind of didn't really show this much this week, but they did what they needed to do, and they got that win. New face leading the way. Not a new face to Legacy Leagues, but new face to We Got Us for being a leading scorer. Shy Hicks, 27 points. Jamari Robinson followed it up with 21. Derek Willis, 17. Kubi with 16. For Top Dogs, Sean Yard, 29. New face to the Top Dogs, not to Legacy. He played last season. Zach Pickney, 24 points, and then Joey Niederberger, 18 points, 10 rebounds. And our boy Joey Hot Hand Zoko scoring 15 points. He scored 30 in Rhode Island this week too, so that's 45 for the week for Joey. He's going crazy. Yeah, I'll go right to you, Steven. Talk about We Got Us. 95 points.
Yeah, I mean that's an insane score. I mean, I think that's at least top 3 of the points we've seen so far going into week 5. But that is actually a very close game for sure. And I know we talked about defense a lot for We Got Us last week on the pod. Um, Definitely wasn't in their favor. But if you're going to score 95 points, then you don't even got to worry about defense because not many teams are allowing that many points. So that's good on We Got Us there.
No, yeah, I mean, Top Dogs has been struggling defensively, definitely not offensively. Adding Zach to the team this week helped immensely. Yeah, and as soon as I saw Zach show up, I'm like, him and Derek are going to be going back and forth, dunking on each other. Well, I actually said dunking on other people, but they ended up dunking on each other, which was pretty funny. Both going up for blocks. That's what those guys do. They play with hustle, and you love to see it. 2 guys we might be seeing in that all-star dunk competition. I'd love to see them go back and forth, throwing down some crazy dunks. Yeah, Joey's only missed 1 shot, and they could have fed him, honestly. He went off in Rhode Island. He still got it, so you really could have fed him more, and I would have liked to see him kind of bring the game a little closer in that fourth quarter. I think he got most of the shots out in that first half. He shouldn't be afraid to shoot the ball. He's been around long enough. Get him the ball in that fourth. Let him fly. But good job for Shy Hicks keeping his team in this. It was a close game until the last 2 minutes when We Got Us kind of pulled away, and that was thanks to big shots from Shy and just defensive plays from Derek and Kubi. Kubi's a great defender. I know statistically he didn't get any blocks or steals, but his on-ball defense is great. Whenever he was guarding Zach, he kind of shut him down in the paint. And it was mainly those fast break dunks that Zach was able to get because he's just so fast, and you can't really jump with him on the fly. As seen, Derek jumped with him on the fly, and it didn't really work too well. But same goes for Zach and trying to jump for Derek. 2 high flyers going at it. That's the best it gets in Legacy. Very good matchup. Top Dogs are close. They're close to getting their first win. I think it's coming next week. We'll talk about it later, but they're putting pieces together. And if dude, it's the potential team. This is my last week I'm going to talk about it because it's always potential team. If they had Sean, Dom, Zach, David DePina, any of these guys that average 10 plus, show up each week, Joey Niederberger, if they just had a core 5 or 6 guys, this team would be so good. And I feel like they would take that We Got Us spot at that third team, and potentially leading towards that second place behind who's next. I think that team is really good, but they just don't show up. So for now, they're winless, and that's how it is. That's how it happens. Yeah, we'll move on to our next game, which was the big hype game of the week. That was the 2 undefeated Titans going at it. Who's next versus Glock Boys. And who's next is our current undefeated team, winning this one against Glock Boys 62-50. It was a close game. I think who's next kind of pulled away. They pulled away in the second half. It slipped a little. Clock Boys tried to sneak back, but it didn't really work out. Amandi was really the only thing working for Glock Boys, kind of pushing himself even further along in that MVP talk. 31 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, most assists on the team. I know they were talking some crap to him, saying he got past the ball, and he led the way against the game that mattered. He led the way. He did everything he could. I know Gio fell a few times. He got subbed in and out. He wasn't feeling great throughout the game, but he was just giving it his all. Wasn't the best shooting night, as we've seen him shoot a lot better. He only scored 8 points, and he's averaging almost 25, I think. So wasn't the best game from him. Whether he does better next time this team matches up, I think in February, will we see a different outcome? Maybe. I say maybe because it was a close game for what it was, and for Glock Boys only having 5 guys. But for who's next, we saw Angel Sereno scoring the most, 17 points, 8 rebounds, and he's usually not the guy who's scoring the most. So that's why I say maybe this game would be different, because any given night, I think who's next has a guy that could score 20. Steven, you can talk a little bit about who's next. Talk about what went right. Just talk about that roster and what each and every one of them did to get this win.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, it always came down to defense for this game. With two teams that average a lot of points, you knew defense was going to win this game, and that's something that Who's Next did really well with. I mean, you could hear the communication from Pereira around the whole court, where they knew they had to play switch defense. They could not play man to man, because from past games from Glock Boys, we've seen the speed is in their favor. They are so good at just slashing to the basket and getting easy finishes around the rim that they knew they had to play switch defense, which is something that was kind of interesting because they were just forcing Glock Boys to shoot. I mean, Glock Boys shot 5% from the 3-point line, making 1 out of 19 attempts, which is something we saw against Dane Green, which is kind of how they really pulled away, which is getting wide open looks in the corners, the wings, top of the key, etc. But it just came down to who wanted it more, and you could just see the energy on who's next sideline. They just wanted it more. Even if they're not playing on the court, they're still playing a different role on the bench. Whether it's talking smack, whether it's getting under the skin of the Glock boys, regardless, who's next just wanted it badly. They wanted it more.
And that's what it comes down to, the heart in the fight. Whoever's got more. When you got this much talent on 2 teams, it comes down to whoever wants it more, and whoever's gonna, be jumping at those loose balls, whoever's gonna be jumping at the fast break dunks. Speaking of that, Yala Smith, not a high scoring game, but 13 rebounds, 4 blocks for him. He's in his kind of own conversation right now for Defensive Player of the Year. Not too many guys I've seen this year kind of creeping up in that conversation, but he's definitely somebody I would keep an eye out for that. It's just hard when you got like a 7-foot wingspan. Yala is just, his hand is always near the ball whenever you're going up, and he just makes it difficult for people to score. I know in the post game interview, Maj was telling who's next. It's gonna look different next time they match up because they were missing some guys. Then Darwin kind of fired back saying, no, that wouldn't matter. They don't change a 12-point win. But it was Jay and Leon were missing for Glock Boys, and Jay leads the league in assists still, even from missing this week. And I think when you got a guy like Leon who can score, I think he's averaging 13. A guy who averages 13 missing from a 12-point loss, where's that 13 points? That 13 points gets them a win right there. And I think Jay giving out those assists each week, leading the league right now, it makes it easier to score, especially for Gio and Amandi, because you kind of know who's going to go for the ball or on offense when it's just them out there. With no Jay and no Leon, it makes it a lot easier for who's next to defend that. Whether or not it's going to be a different outcome next time, we'll see in a couple weeks. It's hard when who's next just has so many guys and they can kind of fire on all sides of the court and all types of offense, whether that's 3-point shots, crashing the rim. Any given night, it could be any given guy's game. So it's hard to predict. I would probably stick with who's next for next time because I'm biased and half those guys were my teammates. But yeah, very excited for that matchup when we see it next. But we'll move on to our final game, that one being OTM Gangrene. And OTM won this one in a bit of a bigger difference than the other two games. They took this 61-46 over Gangrene, and man, Gangrene just could not get it offensively going. Kwame Bell led the way, 17 points, followed by Josh Monty's 15 points. But man, they just did not do it well on offense. Shots were not falling, missed dunks, just everything was not going their way. OTM's Shaq led the way, 20 points. It was an ugly 20. It wasn't a very good shooting night for him. James Fleming, though, had a great shooting night, as he did last week, 4-5 from 3, scoring 12 points. And then I wanted to shout out T. Gallo, shortest guy on the court, getting 11 rebounds. That's funny. But, you got to box out. You got to box out even at the 3-point line with him, because he'll just sprint into the paint in 2 seconds, get the rebound. That's what he does. Steven, talk about OTM. I mean, sure, they're playing a team that hasn't won a game, but talk about kind of what they do right and what they can kind of work on to get this going for future games.
So something I think OTM does really well is they have a very good post defense of, Nico Wright and Dean Wade. They're big down low, meaning they had 10 offensive rebounds in that game, which second chance points in this league are big. They are massive. They are game deciders. And when you're going up against Gangrene, a team that is kind of undersized apart from Bush Carter, but it's just such an advantage because you saw Nico Wright down low just kind of just feasting, getting a mismatch and just getting the easy layup, and just having good interior defense as well is definitely something that's big because everyone wants to dunk. Everyone hears 8.5 rims and they just want to yam the thing. So that's something that I think they do really well is interior defense. They don't really allow many buckets down low. But something they can work on is I think the high percentage shooting needs to be kind of something to look at. Like, yes, you have a great shooter in Shaq Murray, averaging over 20 points at this point, but can't be your only option. You can't rely on him because eventually, we saw against Who's Next, they figured that out. They don't want Shaq Murray dribbling the ball because they know he knows how to handle. Force him to make a pass, and once they did that, they turned the ball over and get a score on the other end. They got to figure out more ways to score rather than relying on Shaq Murray.
No, that's exactly what I was going to touch on. Was passing the ball. They didn't really have many assists this game, and I think they're the lowest in assists, even though they have these 2 wins. They still just can't figure it out. Besides like that ISO ball, or that like dribble shoot, dribble dunk. But it's I know they listen to the pod, so I want to give them a little tip. When Shaq is dribbling for like 15 seconds, if you guys just when I watch the game, I see like this game in Gangrene. When Shaq's dribbling and when he's moving around the court, the more he moves, the more he dribbles, the more eyes kind of go to him. It's harder to do against a team who's next, who's very disciplined. But other teams, will slowly like become impatient and they'll kind of creep up towards Shaq if he's coming their way or coming that way. Just make a cut to the rim. Shaq's a good passer. He'll throw you a lob. He'll find an open James Fleming in the corner, or he'll find a cutting Nico or a cutting Terrence. Terrence, just run to the rim and get those lobs. No one's gonna jump with you for a lob, let alone a fast break. Yeah, when he's dribbling, he's getting the eyes of everyone on him, and that just makes it so much easier for you guys to cut. So I just need to see more guys moving on offense, and I promise that offense is going to move so much better when Shaq isn't, forced to take 20 shots a game, and it's going to look good. I know I'm giving criticism, even though you guys won, but I like you guys, so I want you guys to do better and keep winning. But yeah, when Shaq's just dribbling and dribbling, make those lanes a lot denser, make it harder for the other team to kind of keep their eyes on him, because when there's less guys to kind of step up and when the floor is more spread, it's gonna make it either easier for Shaq to get it to the rim or for one of you guys to get open to Shaq to pass it to. And yeah, that's kind of a little tip. And for Gang Green though, they definitely got to work on their chemistry. I mean, shots weren't falling. Your shots aren't gonna fall every game. There's gonna be games when you miss a lot of shots, but just right now, everyone makes playoffs. We don't gotta worry about going undefeated in the regular season. You guys haven't won a game in 4 weeks. It's a tough thing to do is win in this league. I know you guys haven't played the equal top dogs, who also haven't won a game, and it feels like everyone's kind of got their easy games, yet besides you guys, yet. But just the chemistry, man. Just have fun when you're out there, and it's gonna be whether you're winning or losing, you're gonna have so much more fun, and it's gonna be a lot better of a time. Like I hate to see guys getting frustrated and like not wanting to play. It's just like just play basketball, man. Have fun. Worry about this in the playoffs. For the regular season, just chill, get your chemistry up. Get to know each other. I know some guys haven't played with each other, so get going with that team chem. Gang Green, y'all got some ballers, and I think you can pull away with a win against the top dogs next week. I know you guys play them, so you gotta lock in mentally, or top dogs are just gonna come out shooting, and they're gonna come away with that game. So for Gang Green, I mean, get your shots to fall. I know that's not really something you can just snap of the finger make that change, but a lot of open shots were put up from Gang Green. They just weren't falling. If on a better shooting night, this game could look differently, but not if you guys are fighting with each other, on and off the bench. Not if you guys are disagreeing. So, just show up to play basketball. Don't mind, a little smack talk from each other, but just lock in mentally. Y'all will be good. Just have fun, man. I've had 2 seasons with all my boys from back in high school. We all came up to play in this league, and we won one game in those 2 seasons, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had playing with my boys. So just have fun. I promise you. Just chill, have fun, and it's gonna be great. And then lock in for those playoffs, and you guys could have an upset coming. People are gonna look at you guys as underdogs, and they're not gonna see a slowly progressing and growing team like Gang Green kind of beating them, and I think you guys have a chance to do that. So yeah, speaking about that, we'll look into our next week predictions. Some good games, some teams that. So yeah, we got teams coming off of a loss, 2 losses playing each other, and Gang Green top dogs. So I'll talk about that first. We'll make our predictions for that. Steven, I want you to give me a prediction for Gang Green top dogs. First team looking for their first win. Yeah, who you got in this one, Gang Green or top dogs?
I mean, both teams looking for their first win, so there is obviously that fight. Nobody wants to be the last team that is winless. But I think I have to go top dogs in this matchup due to the fact that they scored 86 points last game. So scoring is not their issue. It's clearly a defensive mindset that the top dogs need to go into this game against the Dane Green, who did struggle in their percentages last week, shooting 34 from the field, 13 beyond the arc, and I did have a perfect free throw line going 8 for 8. But with a team that's kind of struggling, figuring out how to score, not having the best chemistry as you mentioned earlier, I think you kind of have to go with top dogs because, like you said before, if this team actually shows up with all the right players and everybody is there, this top dogs team could nearly be ranked number one or even two, somewhere in that top three. So I think top dogs, especially with that Pickney now, I think is going to be a dangerous asset for that team.
Yeah, with just the undersized Gang Green, I just don't think there's people to stop Zach at the rims. Same with Joey Niederberger. He does um, take his post matchups, and he looks at the team and tries to get onto the smallest guy down there and kind of work his magic in the paint. He can kind of take over this game. So could Zach, but Sean Yard always leads the way for them, whether that's getting them the ball when they need it or just shooting lights out. I'm gonna go with top dogs for this one. Right now, I'm just not liking the space Gang Green's in, mentally with each other, but I think they can work the things out. And if this top dogs Gang Green matchup happens down in the down further the line, depending who shows up for top dogs, I could pick Gang Green on a given night. So I'm sticking with top dogs this week, though. I just think coming off of 86 points is crazy, and they tasted the win and just lost it. It got taken from them at the last second. So I think they want to win big, and they want to get their first win. Um, it'll be exciting to see. It's always a good matchup. I know I've played in matchups when we hadn't had our first win yet against the other team who didn't have their first win, and that feels like our championship is the two worst teams or worst record teams playing against each other. It's a really fun game, and it's going to be a fun one to watch. So we'll go into our next matchup. A team coming off a win, OTM versus Glock Boys, who are coming off their first loss. Glock Boys, I'm gonna say, want some revenge. But Gio was a little shaken up this week, so if he doesn't show up, it could be a matchup we talk about a little more. But I'm gonna assume he's showing up, and of course I'm gonna assume Amandi's showing up. He's got to continue his MVP kind of season. Um, that being said, I'll go first, Steven, this time. I'm sticking with Glock Boys. OTM, I mean, I think this will be an offensive game. Defensively, I don't see like anything really stopping Shaq on Glock Boys. I think Amandi and Gio are good defenders, but I think Shaq's almost too fast. I mean, I say Amandi's a great defender, so I think he can actually stick with Shaq. But if they do what I said, where they just move around, I think they could be scoring a lot of points. Not enough to beat Glock Boys though. But I do like OTM. I don't think it's going to be a blowout that we might have seen. If we said if this matchup was week 4, it would be a lot different because we would have thought Glock Boys are going to blow them out. I think it's going to be a lot closer, and we got to respect OTM. But I'm picking Glock Boys here. Steven, tell me what you think.
I'm going to agree with you. Glock Boys coming off a big loss, probably a game that they wish they can have back. But I mean, it's kind of like you said, like OTM definitely has upset potential for sure. But it's if they use their tools right. If they look at who's next did this past week, they can definitely who's next gave you the tape. They know how to beat Lock Boys, and if OTM kind of studies that defensive, constantly moving, switching, there's upset potential. But again, Glock Boys definitely gonna need to keep up with who's next, so they're gonna look for some revenge, as you said earlier.
Yeah, I'll go back to what I was saying about OTM. James Fleming, I think's missed like 2 threes in the last 2 weeks. He's shooting great. So if Shaq just dribbles for half the play and then finds an open James Fleming when he kind of draws in maybe a double team when he drives, then pump or shoot pass out, and you got James for an open shot. I want to see James taking the 20 shots more than I want to see Shaq taking the 20 shots because I think Shaq has a lot more in his bag than just shooting off the dribble. So I want to see James put up a lot of threes, and I also want to see Terrence attacking the rim a little more. I know kind of teams have been figuring him out. He's not going to shoot the ball, but when you got Shaq, maybe crash the rim with him, see what happens. If Shaq's going to throw you a lob here and there, see what comes with that. But yeah, we'll go into our next matchup, the last one. This is a good one. Who's next? A very hot, who's these teams are so confusing. Y'all put sentences as your team names. I'm sorry. Who's next? Undefeated, all-star, best talent across the board. We've been talking about all season. Versus we got us, a team we didn't see on this pod after week 1 begin one of the top teams. We saw maybe not the best performance from them, but they've made a statement here, and they are here to be one of the top teams. Currently, I think ranked number 3. Yeah, it's going to be a good matchup if Shai plays like he did, if Jamari and Derek do what they do, if Kubi locks in on defense. I want to see a Kubi EJ matchup. I think that's going to be a very good matchup. If Kubi can shut down EJ, that will be cool. If they just go back and forth, I also want to see that too. A lot of high flyers on We Got Us. A lot of high flyers on who's next. I think it's going to be a 3-ball kind of decision kind of game. Whoever gets the more threes. I've shown We Got Us a lot of love, and I want to continue to show We's Got Us a lot of love. But that being said, I can't go against who's next. The undefeated team. Of course, I love interesting storylines, so I want to see an underdog every week, unless I'm on the team. But I want to see an upset every week. So as much as I hype up who's next, a We Got Us victory would be very cool. So I do want we got. Oh, sorry, We Got Us. You guys got to change your team name or something. I'm gonna start abbreviating them to WGU. I want to see you guys, fight out there. I think it's gonna be a intense matchup. I think it's gonna be vocal. Both those teams are gonna get in each other's heads, so it's gonna be fun. Steven, what you got to talk about this matchup?
I mean, definitely, probably, I would say probably matchup of the week. Just looking back at the other ones, I would say I probably gonna lean towards who's next in this one. Coming off a big win and a huge statement of a victory, because I believe going into week 3 was the only time who's next was ranked number one. So there was definitely some ranking back and forths there. But again, like, We Got Us is on a 3-game win streak. They started off 0-1, now 3-1, sitting third in rankings. But I do think if We Got Us can kind of lock in, and it's gonna come down to the three ball, because who's next is really that's what who's next is really good at, is just getting open looks beyond the arc and kind of just punishing when a teammate switches on, because everyone can shoot, or all four positions can just shoot. So it's going to be a tough matchup, but if We Got Us can just stay focused, because they are I would say one of the most chirpiest teams in the Legacy right now, between them and Dane Green. But I would say if they can just stick with one another and just focus on the next play, and rather than just getting mad at everything or something like that, it can be in for a really good matchup. But I got to go with who's next in this one.
Yeah, Gangrene, or sorry, not Gangrene. We Got Us. You guys have a chance. If you won this game in a statement kind of way, not like a last second bucket, you guys could probably take that number one spot. I just want to say that.
Hmm.
You beat the number one undefeated team. Um, it's gonna be cool. It could shake up everything if you guys win, and I would love to see that. I would love everything in this next week pod to just go crazy when we're talking about We Got Us on top. That would be really cool. So you guys have a chance to shake everything up here. Um, you know, Currently me and Steven are doubting you, and if we had a couple other podcast members, I'm sure they would also go with who's next. But I want to see an underdog, you know, huge upset. This would be a huge upset, and that would bump you up in the rankings. And I think it would just be a really cool thing to shake up the league. To have no undefeated teams going into the playoffs would also be cool. Um, but my boys are on who's next, so I always stick with them. Even though it sounds like I'm rooting for them to lose, but I just as the host of this podcast, I want to have the most interesting talks possible and have the most fun on here. So I'm trying to kind of poke a bear here and there to make things interesting. We'll move on to our last little talk. We talked about the predictions, so we always try to end off with something fun. This week, I think we're gonna do all stars. Sorry, excuse me, all star predictions. There's always going to be one all-star from every team. That's how we do it. We select an all-star from every team, and then we can do duplicates later on. So we're going to pick our set-in-stone all-star from each team, and then we're going to pick somebody that's like borderline all-star, maybe not set in stone, but has a chance to kind of have a few good weeks and be in that talk. So that's what we're going to do this week. So we'll talk about the set in stone first. Actually, no, we'll do set in stone from each team, and then we'll do that borderline player that's not set in stone. So we'll go over each team first. We'll start with Gangrene. Uh, I think me and Steven agreed on this. We were talking about it before the show. Our set in stone all star is going to be Josh Monty. I mean, he's just the one that hustles every week. He's the one that doesn't get um, in his teammates' heads. He's the most locked in there, and he's always hustling, and he's always getting back on defense, even when they're down 20. He's always putting in 100%, and that's what you see in an all-star. That's what you see in, honestly, championship level player. Get him on the right team. He can lead that team. He's just a good leader, and he's scoring the most so far this season, playing the hardest, and he's our all-star pick. Steven, you want to talk about the person that is almost there on the edge of being an all-star? Talk about that for Gangrene.
Yeah, I might say potential all-star is gonna be Kwame Bell. And he didn't play last week, which was a shame, because I mean I think him and Josh Monty team up really well. A good backcourt with those two. Kwame Bell, probably one of the highest verticals in Legacy right now. That always gets a lot of steals. He had 2 steals in his last game against OTM, which both resulted in buckets, which is also a very important thing to have. Also led the team last week in 17 points. So, I mean, I think he's kind of like Josh Monty as well. They're kind of like the same player. Only difference is Josh Monty is the voice on the court, which is why I have Josh Monty over Kwame Bell. And also, Castro played all 4 games. So there is also that to take account.
All right, yeah. So just a few. If he had a, if he have a few, excuse me, if he
Yeah.
has a few more good weeks, he could definitely be in that conversation for All Star for that team. This one's a little interesting. We'll go to Glock boys. So set in stone, we could go Gio, we could go Amandi. Both of them, we were talking last week. Both of them in the MVP talk. Um, for a borderline player, I'm taking Leon Canton right now. Averaging 13. We see all stars in this league average probably usually around 16. So if he has a big game, they have a chance to have a revenge game next week where they just all go off. They lost. They want to keep their good records, so they want to keep winning. So if they all go off next week, he shows up. I know he missed out and they lost, so he might want to make a statement, be like, "Hey, next time we see you, who's next? It's gonna be different." Because they don't think that, but I think Clock Boys do. So he's gonna want to show up for them, and he's gonna want to be that all star that maybe potentially 3 all-stars from one team. We've had it before, so it could definitely happen. He is their borderline player, I would say. Um, yeah, we'll move on to OTM. You want to talk about Steven? You want to talk about who their set in stone all-star player is?
Yeah, I mean, I think their sentence has been Shaq Murray. He's led the team in points every week. He's a guy. He's the floor general. He's the one that makes the offense happen. He has all the selection to the shots, whether he's passing the ball or if he's not. He loves to shoot off the dribble, which is something I've noticed. He doesn't really catch and shoot, but he's just the leading scorer and kind of looks like the face of the team.
Totally. I mean, yeah. Borderline player. I think we were talking about two different guys. I'm gonna go with.
Hmm.
I talked about him a lot. James Fleming. I mean,
Hmm.
he's just lights out and he gets going. When he gets a hot hand, he's not missing. He's only missed a few threes these last couple weeks. He didn't really shoot too much in his first game, but if he keeps going, he could be that second scorer OTM's looking for, and just that reliance that Shaq needs to put into somebody, and that could be James, and they could be a second All Star for that team. But you also had someone else you wanted to talk about, so you talk about him.
I did. I mentioned him earlier when we were talking about, the matchup between OTM and Dane Green, but I had Nico Wright as my potential all-star because I feel like every time he gets the ball, he just scores. He's also getting blocks on the other end. I believe he had 2 blocks in the last game against Dane Green. He's just a guy that hustles, and that's something that you really need when it comes to winning. They're 2-2 strictly because of Murray and I think Nico Wright. Nico Wright definitely plays his role. He's just a good role player. He protects the paint, but also gets some buckets on the other end. He abuses that one-on-one matchup down low, which is something that OTM I think needs to do more.
Yeah, he has an underrated finish off the glass. I've seen some crazy layups from him, just nicely fall in when you don't think it's going to. So yeah, keep an eye on him. He's a few games away from being in that talk. A few good games away from being in that talk. So yeah, we'll move on to our next matchup. Let's do top dogs. Think it's kind of obvious. Sean Yard. Uh,
Yep.
you know, he's been in MVP talks in a few past seasons. He's won a championship. He's won a 3-point competition. He's done a lot in this league in his very short, I think 3 seasons. This is his third one. He's set in stone. He's always an all-star. He's always the guy. Sean Yards, I think, are agreed all-star set in stone. For our borderline player, I went with Joey Niederberger. We could talk about Zach. I think you're talking about Zach, right? You
Yep,
want to
that
talk
was
about Zach?
my picking
All
him
right.
as my
We,
guy.
we talk about him in a second, but I want to say
Sure.
Joey Niederberger kind of just like he changes the game for them when he gets the ball in the post, whether guys collapse on him, creating an open shot for someone else. He has a good 3-point touch. Um, He gets a lot of rebounds. He plays hard defense. He's always jumping, whether he's going to get dunked on or not. He's jumping. He's not afraid. I think that's what we see in all-star players, and he's a few good games away from being in that talk. So if he steps up these next few weeks, especially in some games like Gang Green, where we know it's going to be a closer game and we know they have a chance to win, we could see him in that conversation. But Zach, who's only played one game, put up 24, I think, in his first game. So that's easily a second person we could talk about. So go ahead and talk about Zach.
Yeah, I mean, so I will say is I did not watch the game for the most part. I was on the other one with Who's Next and Glock Boys. But when I was watching that game, I kind of turn around and see Pickney just throw a windmill dunk. So clearly that guy has some experience and legacy for sure. Like I mean, you mentioned earlier that he played, was it Rhode Island he played for?
No,
Or
he
was it
played.
Connecticut?
He played Mass last season. It
Oh,
was
he
like
did play Mass. Okay.
a lot of those other guys have played in Rhode Island though. So
Sure. Gotcha. But yeah, no, he looked like a good player, great scorer. Definitely can get some chase down blocks with that speed and vertical for sure. But yeah, I mean, I can't give him the actual All-Star because obviously, Sean Yards is having a great, debatably MVP runner-up season. And Pickney is definitely going to be a 1-2 punch with Yard though. So we might start seeing Sean Yards averages go down, but it might be for a good reason. Because it's like we saw with Glock Boys earlier. There was one player who scored over 10 points, and that was Amandi Weaver with 31. But you got to have more of a scoring diversity if you want to win in this league.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are our guys for top dogs. We'll move on to a very interesting team. A lot of guys that could do it. For We Got Us. I'm gonna go with my boy Derek Revelis. He's just explosive, fun to watch. Defensively, I know you're probably going to talk about Jamari because he's, I think, beating him in scoring right now. But for Derek, for me, it's just that explosiveness and hustle on defense. Think he's just jumping at a lot more guys, and changing kind of the pace on defense for them, and slowing down other teams when they see him in the paint. They kind of think he's a smaller guy, so they're going to attack him. But quickly, he is above the rim blocking them. So I want to see him, especially in an All-Star game. I think it'd be fun to watch. But I know we're going to talk about Jamari, so you talk about Jamari, and then we'll talk about our borderline player.
Yeah, I mean, Jamari Robinson was a great player, guy that is really good at finishing around the rim, but also has what I think a sneaky mid-range game. That guy, because even though the mid-range is for the least amount of points, but it's in the riskiest shot, it could also be the most effective. Just when you think, especially in a league where dunking is what everyone dreams of, and when you think he's going down to the cup, hits you with a hezzy jump shot right in your face, and he will hit it consistently too. And you pair him with Revelis, and then we'll get to him later, but Shy Hicks as well. But he's just a great guy, and probably my pick for the All Star. Because again, you said he is leading in scoring for that team, so I'm gonna go with Jamari Robinson.
Yeah, and just go right into it. Talk about that guy Shy Hicks, who we're gonna put as our borderline player for We Got
Yeah,
Us.
happy to.
Even if he could be an all-star right now, it's three guys that we're talking about. This team has a lot of guys. So talk about Shy Hicks.
Yeah, and Shy Hicks, he had a great game against top dogs, having 27, like we mentioned earlier, on top of 6 rebounds and 3 assists. So, I mean, when you got good scorers like that, passing the ball is a lot easier. I mean, just Shy Hicks, he's got great awareness. He loves the pick and roll. I have noticed that. But I mean, who cares? As long as you're scoring the ball, you're scoring the ball. But he's definitely a good reason why We Got Us has a 3-game win streak, and I'm excited to see what he does in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and for my borderline player, this is how good We Got Us is because they got so many guys. I think this core four, if they're on the court together, they're gonna be hard to beat. I'm gonna go with Brian Kubi. Sorry, I'm so
Mhm.
used to just call him Kubi. That's just a fun, awesome name to say, Kubi.
It
But
is.
yeah, Kubi is my borderline player for We Got Us. Defensively, I think he adds so much. We see guys in the NBA get into the All-Star game where the people that don't really watch the NBA and they only assume all stars are guys who score 30 points. But we see guys like Rudy Gobert getting into the All Star game, and that's because defensively they change the game, and you can't just look at offense. All Star games are known for their offense and for their scoring, but when a guy who defends on ball as well as Kubi does, um, it's definitely all-star potential. And he does score pretty well. You know, I'm a talk to Kubi now. I want to see you dunk more. You get to the rim, and I swear you're dropping it in from above the rim. Just dunk on people, man. You can do it. You have such a high vertical. I want to see you dunk on someone next week. I'm gonna make sure I get it on HD too, and it'll be in the top plays if you do. So, I want to see you dunk on someone. You've got the vertical, you've got the explosiveness, and you've got the confidence. Actually, maybe that's what you know. Maybe he just hasn't played enough games. Maybe it is the confidence that's keeping him from doing it. Just dunk on people, man. If just go, just do it. You only have so many games in this league. Just start dunking on people. Get your highlights. Post it on your story. Everyone's gonna blow you up, being like, "Dude, that's awesome." Trust me, I've had some moments where I put it on my story and everyone just hits me up, and it's just the most fun thing. So just dunk on some guys, and it's gonna make your week. So Kubi, that's my challenge to you. I want to see you dunking on guys, and you're right there in the All Star talk. Um, who we got left? We got who's next? Have we talked about everyone else?
Yeah, I believe who's next is the last
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Who's next is the last one, which is probably the hardest one, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, we got a couple guys we'll talk about for All Star, but like I said, I think all these guys have been All Stars. Besides, I think Jamal and CJ, but everyone else has been an All Star so far in their career in legacy leagues. Besides the guy I'm going to talk about, who I think is one of the front runners, EJ Pemberton, he's kind of just he's just, I think, the most complete player out there. It seems like he has the most experience. Like if this was 10 foot, I would probably see him leading the way for who's next. He just seems to have a good dribble, a good mind on defense, and he plays with a lot of poise. And I think he's a good leader um, on the court. You're going to talk about the other leader in a second, who
Hmm.
who kind of makes a statement each game, and who has for the past 3 seasons. But I think EJ is one of the best dunkers in the league. Uh, he had a top play last week. I didn't see him dunking on too many Glock boys this week, so next week I want to see him kind of going at Kubi in the paint. That's the matchup we were talking about. So if you get dunked on and you don't dunk on him, I'm gonna be upset. Just so we know. But yeah, EJ has chance to be the All Star, but few good games from a few good different guys on who's next could change it up. They're all very equal in scoring and talent right now, so we know they all have a chance to be an All Star. But talk about that other guy we were talking about, Steven.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been saying his name every time I've been on this podcast, but Darwin Perea, definitely the leader in that win against Lost Boys, because you could just see the focus that he had on defense. Forcing turnovers is, like we said before, creating turnovers is gonna win you games in this league. And when Darwin Perea is kind of leading the way, telling you where to be, telling you where to stand, who to guard, it's definitely a guy that you want on your team. And he's also really good at scoring. I mean, he had an unusual performance from the 3-point line, but he definitely did have some crazy shots that went in, which kind of solidified that victory over Glock Boys. And it all started with his his chance on defense. The Glock Boys kind of went on or who's next went on an 8-0 run, which at the end of the first half, which kind of solidified the lead for who's next to give them that win. Which I think, when the guy who's not only just changing the tempo of the game, which is another thing we mentioned, last week on the podcast, was two teams with two completely different tempos. It's going to be hard to see which one can live up to that expectation. And clearly, we saw who's next, kind of matching that Glock boys' speed. And then once they got the lead, now you're in their turf. Now you got to play down to them, which is something I think Darwin is really good at.
Totally, Darwin's been an All Star each season he's played, and I definitely see him being an All Star this year. For our potential, you know, it, they all have potential, but I'm gonna go with Yala Smith. I talked earlier about Kubi's defense and how he's potentially an all-star based on defense. I think it's same goes for Yala. He's not having the highest scoring season like he did last year on the Reapers. He was one of their top scorers. I think he has a very good chance to be that top guy in scoring on a given night. Um, but defensively, he adds so much that I think he very well could be an all-star. So yeah, Yala Smith's the guy I'm sticking with. Did you have someone else for who's next for potential?
I had Angel Serenio as my potential all-star because I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure he's in that top three of just field goal percentage. That guy does not really miss that much, and that's because he just takes smart shots. He's not really a guy who's just going to pull up from three. He might have it wide open, but he might rather just take it down to the cup. If he gets fouled, he gets fouled. He'll get sent to the line. He gets a lot of people in foul trouble as well, which is definitely something really, really intriguing to look at because it's not something you really see in this type of league. Getting other players in foul trouble, forcing them to make substitutions, changing matchups very frequently. And, Sereno is just some guy that he also has a lot of offensive rebounds. He leads the team in offensive rebounds, which is definitely a stat you can't overlook. And, just having him on the court has changed so much for this team.
Yeah, I played with Angel, so I know what he brings to the table. And when he's out on offense, it's kind of like a breather when you see a shot missed because Angel might get the rebound. Angel
Yep.
does a lot of good on offense when he's not touching the ball, whether that's just being in the right spot, send picks, doing what he's got to do to get other guys open shots. Yeah, he just shoots smart and gets those second chance points and easy putbacks. Yeah, definitely an all-star potential for him. I think he always is. I think he's one of the most underrated players in this league. He's a quiet guy, but he's always sneaky and he's always sneaking borderline all-star. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for that talk and this week's talk. We talked a lot. Thank you, Steven, for joining me. Just you and me did it
Of
this week, but
course.
it was
It's
fun.
a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. And we'll see everybody for next week, week 5. A lot of good matchups, and we'll be talking about maybe the playoffs coming up sooner than we think. I think we're about halfway through. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you guys next week.